And good evening. This is Ken Kraetzer for CaMMVets Media. We cover cadets, midshipmen, the military, and veterans proudly since 2008. And it's Air Force Week. The Black Knights will travel to Arlington, Texas, and play the Air Force Academy Falcons in the first of the Commander-in-Chief Trophy games for Army, and a chance to hold on to the Commander-in-Chief trophy. They'll need to win today to hold on to the trophy and have a chance to win it outright if they can win against Air Force and then Navy in December. And we have with us tonight, calling in from West Palm Beach, Florida, Richard Miller. Richard, how are you?
Very well, Ken. I always look forward to this week when it's Air Force Week. The Commander-in-Chief trophy is very important, and this is always important to Army.
Okay, very good. And calling in from the Beat Navy studio in Huntsville, Alabama, and maybe it's the Beat Air Force studio as well this week. We have Colonel Sam Houston from the class of '87. Colonel, how are you?
I'm good, Ken. It's that time of year where if it flies, it dies. So we'll watch the aerial air defense artillery taking aim at the Zoomies on Saturday, and we know it'll be a great game. So looking forward to talking about it.
Yeah, Air Force comes in 5-3, and they've got a very potent offense led by their quarterback, Daniel Hassing, and their noted fullback, Brad Roberts, who is set the fullback record for most yards gained by a Falcon, and has a chance to get the all-time record for rushing at Air Force by the end of the season. Colonel, you've watched Air Force play a number of times this year. What's your impression?
Well, they are, they at times they're very potent, but sometimes they play a little flat, and that's kind of mystifying. But they're always dangerous, especially in the Commander-in-Chief Surface Academy rivalry games. Zeke Daniels, the quarterback, this is his third year as a starter, so he's the most experienced triple option quarterback in the Surface Academy play right now. And what makes him even a little more dangerous, as we found out the past two seasons, even though Army won the past 2 years, there was times in the game where you were sweating bullets because Zeke Daniels suddenly became Dan Marino, throwing the ball down the field with pinpoint accuracy to what seemed to be very heavily covered wide receivers, and giving Air Force a chance to be in position to pull the upset. Brad Roberts is, I mentioned this at the beginning of the season, Brad Roberts is the most fundamentally sound running back for any Surface Academy right now. And he is a real workhorse of a back. He's not the biggest B back, but what makes Roberts effective is the fact that he does not go down on first contact. He is always moving forward. His legs are always churning. He always breaks the first contact. So you hit him at the line of scrimmage, then you get dismayed that he bounces and picks up another 3, 4, and maybe even breaks it even further. And he currently is the all-time B-back rushing leader for the Air Force Academy. He's having a phenomenal season, and he is a real workhorse that I wish played for Army, but he is Air Force. And the good news about Zeke Daniels and Brad Roberts is that this is their first years, so this is the last time that we're going to see them. But then again, it is Air Force, so maybe they might pull a few strings to bring them back next year too. But Air Force as a whole, they're the most solid of the service academies on sheer statistics and the execution that they've delivered on the field so far. And I think probably the most consistent play that Army should be concerned with is how Air Force's defense has been playing this year. They play really well. They play well against the run. They play well against the pass. And they don't give up the big play very often. And a lot of the players on the defense have been playing. This is their second or third year putting in reps for the Zoomies. And so they're well conditioned and familiar with each other. They know they're very, very seasoned on the schemes that the defensive coordinator runs, and they'll be ready. Just a reminder that Air Force has not won the Commander-in-Chief Trophy outright since the 2016 season. We are currently in the longest drought of Air Force not winning the Commander-in-Chief Trophy since Paul Johnson was at Navy. And it is suffice to say, they're going to come in hungry. They're still smarting from the overtime loss last season. They're still smarting from the 4th and goal loss that Army put on them at Mikey 2 years ago. And they're probably going to put up as good of a showing as Air Force has put up in this game in the last few years. So it really is going to be Army's biggest challenge of the season, putting Wake Forest aside, to be their A game the entire time and be ready for combat, because this is going to be some true trench warfare going on at Globe Life Field.
Well, I'd agree. It's Air Force has got, when you have a senior quarterback, I mean, Army's going to play a senior quarterback on Saturday, but you've got one that's played most of the time for them for 3 years in Zeke Daniels. One of the things that stands out to me when I look at the Air Force stats is their defense, and that they're giving up just 126 yards a game rushing the ball, and 164 passing, less than 300 yards a game on defense. That's a pretty good track record.
Yeah, that's what I was pointing out. Their defense, many of the players on their defense have been playing for a few years now, and they're very familiar with the system, the schemes. They're very confident in the play of each other, and they do a great job of gang tackling, pursuit to the outside. Their defensive line play has been solid throughout the season. They do manage to get pressure on the quarterback when the other team is in passing situations through a combination of straight 4-man rush and blitzing schemes that they either are designed or are delay blitz, kind of similar to what, say, Jay Bateman might have used to run at Army. And they've put up some really good numbers. Now, part of the numbers is a byproduct of the fact that they are in the Mountain West. And aside from Air Force, most teams in the Mountain West they normally run some kind of hybrid of the RPO. They do a lot more passing, and therefore their running game is not, they're not playing teams that put up 250 and 300 yards a game rushing. But their statistics defensively are they're way ahead of Army in the statistical categories across the board on defense, to include the most important one, which is scoring defense.
Absolutely. Well, I thought we'd do something a little different tonight and hear a little bit of an interview I did with Army head coach Chef Monken at West Point last week, and let's see if we can have that one play. Football practice, have a chance to talk to the head coach of Army football, and that is Chef Monken. And Chris, night here for practice, very high energy. Your players are really getting psyched for the Air Force game. What was practice like for you?
It was a good practice. We've got to do a great job of executing. There's a lot of emotion in these games, and the guys are fired up to to really be out here and practice and preparing for the opportunity, but execution is what's going to win. So we're going to make sure our assignments are right, and we're playing great fundamentally, and we're prepared to play a really tough, hard football game.
Absolutely. And we're talking with Tyler Komorowskii a little bit about defense. And Air Force has got a terrific rushing attack, 336 yards a game, 5.7 yards a carry. Is it any different from what you've seen from them in recent years?
It's very similar, and they're impressive. They do a good job, and they run the ball very effectively, and they do it against everybody. Their B-back or their fullback just set a school record for the most yards for a B-back. Their quarterback has been playing for 3 years and really throws the ball well. Got a couple really good receivers. The Cormier kid is an outstanding receiver and very big on the offensive line. And so what they do really fits their personnel. They do a really good job on offense.
Look at their defense. Their stats, 291 yards a game, rushing, just 126 yards given up. It seems like they're very solid on defense this year.
Always have been. They do a really good job, especially defending the run. I think they're probably a lot like us philosophically, that they want to be able to be good at stopping the run. But they play in a league that's got a lot of really good skilled players, and they play with everybody in that league, and year in and year out, they're battling the best teams in that league and beating some of the best teams in that league. So it's going to be a tough ball game. It always is. It's a really hard game to win, and so we got to get our guys ready and prepared, and hopefully we'll play well enough to earn the victory.
Offensively, you two very strong performances against Colgate and Louisiana Monroe. Rushing game was solid. You had rhythm on offense. You feel good about where your offense is now?
We're improving. We still got work to do. And our guys are humble enough to realize that there's some things we've got to improve at if we're going to continue to have success, certainly against the defense like the one we're going to face down in Texas. They know us as well as anybody in the country knows us. So we're going to have to make sure that we've got a great plan and we execute the plan with great precision.
Army head coach Jeff Monken, great to see you. We'll see you down in Texas next week when you take on the Air Force Academy.
Thanks, Cam.
Good to see you. Okay. And that was a chance we had last week to talk to Army head coach Jeff Monken. First time we've been able to get the technology to work to bring an interview from right from West Point onto our show. Sam, anything stand out in the coach's comments?
No, not really. I mean, he pretty much reiterated what we've already talked about. He talked about Hazik Daniels having played for 3 years and is an effective passer. He talked about Brad Roberts and how strong of a runner he is and has been for the Air Force Academy. Talked about some of the skill positions, which have performed very well this year. So I would say that the team and the coaching staff have done more so than we have their homework about what they need to do to have the best possible team on the field to line up and play the most effective schemes and game plan to beat Air Force on Saturday. And it definitely involves being able to recognize some of the key strengths that Air Force brings to the table. Excuse me. And to be able to negate those strengths and attack them. And so it'll be interesting to see what type of play calling and defensive and offensive lineups we see for Air Force. I would imagine we will see some we would see some schemes and play calling that are unique to this season. That's something else that's really nice about Service Academy games is that the teams, they develop plays on both sides of the ball that are specific to stopping another Service Academy or exploiting a weakness that they've seen on the defense of that other Service Academy. And a great example was last season when Christian Anderson hit Tyrell Robinson on the wheel route that went about 80 yards for a touchdown. And that play that wheel route pass that they ran, as I recall from the passing plays that they ran up to that point of the season last year, they had not run that particular wheel route, and it exploited a coverage gap in the Air Force Academy defense that utilized Robinson's speed and getting into the open zone, and Christian Anderson delivering a perfectly thrown timing pass for the wheel route that caught him in full stride. So, it'll be interesting to see what kind of plays calling we see, what kind of defensive schemes we see in the lineup, who the players are that they're rotating through. But you can see the gears spinning in Coach Monken's head when he talks. I mean, he's about he's like a chess player. He's about 10 moves ahead when he's talking to you. So he's giving you the superficial, but what you're not seeing is the 10 layers of the onion back about, what it is he really has planned for this Saturday.
Oh yeah, and he keeps his cards close to his vest. In fact, I posed a question about the quarterbacks. I just said, what is it? How good an asset it is to have 4 quarterbacks who you can play, 3 of whom are seniors. And he said, yeah. But I thought it was interesting at today's media session, they brought out Jamel Jones to talk to the media. And I think that's an indication that he may play, or that could have been a decoy, as you said, Sam. I think Coach Monken wants Air Force Academy preparing for both, and also watching Cade Ballard's game films as well. Now, Richard, why don't we have you go through some of the big games from last week?
Yes, some of the big games from last week. Arkansas defeat in the top 25. Some of the games from last week. Number 16 Notre Dame, number 16 Syracuse, suffered their first loss 41-24 to Notre Dame defeated Syracuse 41-24. Syracuse is now 6-1 on the season. Number 2 Ohio State, a 44-31 victory over number 13 Penn State. That's only their second loss at 6-2. TCU improves to 8-0 on the season. They defeated West Virginia 41-31 in that game for the TCU Horned Frogs. Duggan had 3 touchdowns for 341 yards. In the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, the number 1 Georgia Bulldogs 42-20 over the Florida Gators. Bennett threw for 316 yards and had two touchdowns. Edwards had 106 yards rushing with 2 touchdowns. Number 20 UCF is now 6-2 along with UCF, a 25-21 victory for UCF in that game. Georgia is also 4-4 on the season. Let's see. Number 3 Tennessee goes to 8-0 now, defeating Kentucky 44-6. Hooker for the Volunteers threw for 245 yards and 3 touchdowns. Also, number 10 Wake Forest lost to Louisville 48-21. Also, as well, you had number 4 Michigan defeating Michigan State 29-7. Michigan is now 8-0, while Michigan State is 3-5. But that was just not the story of the game. I think what I just sent to you, Ken, is a couple of Michigan State football players have been suspended for altercation in the tunnel of Michigan Stadium during I think that was after the game.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Tim, have you been?
Four players for the Michigan State Spartans.
Tim, have you been in that tunnel? I have. I got a chance after the Army-Michigan game in 2019 to walk the length of that tunnel. It is a long walk. It's probably 50 yards, and it's pretty tight.
Right.
And normally after a game, the losing team departs rather quickly, and the winning team stays out on the field. And but the 2 locker rooms are literally 15 feet away from each other, and so an opportunity for for the players to still mingle, and unfortunately, it turned unfortunate. What's your thought when you hear about that in college football?
I mean, there's no place for it. It's undisciplined activities that players are engaging in that they should know better. And on top of that, the coaching staff should have the law down on their players. That I know tensions are high. I know it's a rivalry game, but you don't have to go. You don't have to turn into a lawless society of anarchy, just trying to get on and off the field. That doesn't solve anything. You solve your problems. You solve your differences on the field in the game. And that's where you leave it. You don't take it into the tunnel. You don't take it over to the sideline. You don't take it up into the stands. Sure. So I think that it's right that these players get suspended. And honestly, I think that the school itself, if it isn't already, they should be conducting a comprehensive review of the program to make sure that there is no systemic type of bad behavior that is being promoted or allowed to exist within the roster, because this is bad publicity. It puts a stain on a rivalry game of as much importance as Michigan State, and it's what people will remember for the game about. They won't remember what happened on the field. Now they're going to remember that there was an altercation in the tunnel and some players got suspended. So, it's very selfish on the part of the player to do something like that, and it's just pretty stupid. It's very boneheaded. You can't lose your cool. You just can't lose your cool. Like I said, if you want to blow off steam, then you do it on the field in the course of the regular play of the game. So, but Michigan definitely got revenge on Michigan State. There's no doubt about that. They dominated the game. Another game that I thought was pretty impressive. I hate to say it. I'm not an Ohio State fan. But Penn State was playing tough for 3 quarters, and then Ohio State just turned the juice on and just destroyed Penn State in the 4th quarter. But the games that I found to be the most shocking of all this past Saturday, one was Wake Forest getting absolutely destroyed by Louisville. I mean, just routed. And then even worse off was Oklahoma State's performance against Kansas State. So Oklahoma State, I believe, came into the game top 10 team, I think, and they walked away a 48-0 loser to Kansas State. So that was an absolute embarrassment on the part of their team and their program that was not expected. And just is got to be something that just makes the players and the coaches and the fans think, maybe our program's not as good as we thought. And maybe Oklahoma game is going to be another unfortunate loss for Oklahoma State again this year, no matter what Oklahoma's program is doing right now. So
another loss for Texas, though.
Yeah.
In their rebound. I thought, what was the game of Boston, Wake Forest beating Boston College last week? And maybe, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong week. Let me update.
Yeah, Wake Forest lost to Louisville. Wake Forest got run off the field by Louisville this past Saturday.
Yeah, that's a bit of a surprise.
And then take a look at East Carolina. East Carolina beat BYU, and East Carolina is two games they should have won away from being 7-1 right now. So, like I was saying at the beginning of the season, ECU, they're my sleeper team for the AAC, and they're really starting to play well. And that was a good win for them on Thursday night against BYU. NC State, their game on Thursday night against Virginia Tech was They were down pretty significant, but they battled back and won the game. And then for those of you who are night owls, I'll tell you another game that was pretty incredible. And that was the San Diego State Fresno State game. San Diego State was up by a couple of scores late in the game. Fresno State scored a touchdown, got the 2-point conversion. Then they kicked an onside kick and recovered it, scored, took the lead. And on San Diego State's last possession, San Diego State threw an interception and the game was over. So in the span of about 2.5 minutes, I think, maybe it was less than that, Fresno State battled back and won the game. A game that, like I said, they were down 2 scores and managed to come back and win.
One game that stands out to me is looking in the Big Ten that Illinois beat Nebraska, and Illinois having a terrific season. I believe they're 7-1.
Another school that was a Monken rumor just a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I thought it would be a fit for him, being from Illinois and from a coaching family in Illinois. To be the head coach of the state university there is a huge position in the football culture.
Right.
But, someone else got the job.
So the next coaching dominoes carousel is about to fall. Auburn just fired their head coach. And what that means is that a top tier coach within either Power 5 or Big 5 conferences is going to get the job at Auburn. And that's going to make another either Power 5 or Big 5 conference team head coaching position open. So you don't have to worry about hearing Monken's name being thrown around about Auburn. That's not going to happen. But whatever school Auburn ends up pulling a head coach away from, that could possibly be another one of the Monken rumor mill schools that we're going to have to go through the painful stress of waiting and hearing all the rumors and finding out, who they finally selected, and reading all of the sports beat writers putting their predictions out and listing the who are the best coaches for this position, and you'll see Monken's name thrown in there, and then you're going to be sweating bullets that here we go again. Every season it's the same thing.
Yeah, what do you think about the Nebraska situation? I mean, it's so surprising to see Nebraska 3-5 really struggling and going into a period where the Big Ten is going to get more and more difficult when USC and UCLA join it, because they're both playing well at the moment, especially.
Statistically, I mean, win-loss record and statistically, Nebraska has struggled ever since Tom Osborne left the program. And you can go back and look. I mean, they've had like about 5 coaches since Tom Osborne left the program. And, Tom Osborne was a legend. He's College Football Hall of Fame, won 3 or 4 national championships, had like a 860 win percentage for his entire time. He was at the school for a couple of decades. Actually, I think a little longer than that. Used to play the rivalry games when it was Nebraska versus Oklahoma, and Oklahoma had Barry Switzer as their head coach, who had similar success. And then, but ever since Tom Osborne has left Nebraska, the program has been in a steady state of decline, and no coach that they have hired has been able to restore the luster of the Cornhusker Nation. So they're one of these programs that is still living in the glorious history of the program, but they have not delivered that type of play on the field in a while. And so I personally think that they jumped the gun on Scott Frost. I know that they got impatient with him real fast, and he was a rising star at UCF when they hired him, and they were expecting instant delivery. But I think that what happened with Scott Frost is only a magnification of the decay within the Nebraska program that he was trying to correct. And quite frankly, the decay was a little bit more than what he could correct under the timeline that the Cornhusker Nation was expecting him to deliver. And so he got sent packing. Wow. And so, you know, I don't know. Cornhusker Nation is really going to have to pull themselves away from expecting the Tom Osborne years with the next coaching hire, the very first season that the coach is on the sideline, and recognize that, hey, you've been through several coaches since the Osborne days. And, you know, maybe some of them were not good hires, but some of them might have had the program on the path to recovery. They just weren't given enough time to make it happen. And Scott Frost, I think, was one of them.
Yeah, I mean, just watching what Jeff Monken did at West Point, it took 2 years of building, 2 tough years, but they started to bring the players in recruiting and then in player development until they were ready for breakout in the 3rd year in 2016. And right. I think
remember that Monken's 2nd season was worse win-loss than his 1st season.
Well, it's not getting the players in, and certainly at West Point, it's a longer process. Obviously, it takes 2 years to get players in if they're looking at schools as juniors. And right. Then at West Point, about 2/3 of the players go to the prep school for a year. And so it takes longer to go from recruiting to getting them on the field. And we all know you don't want to really play freshmen, sophomores. You want to play juniors and seniors. So it takes, you know, a while till your program is mature that you're not playing freshmen and sophomores.
Right.
But the 2016, those guys that were brought into the program, Jeremy Timp and all, Ken Brinson, that great linebacker core. And
one thing about Timp wasn't recruited by Monken. Timp was recruited by Ellerson. So yeah, Monken did inherit a few players from the Ellerson years that he was able to throw in who performed very well, Timp being one of them. So he made do with what he had. And Steve Shalhoub always likes to tell the story about during the first 2 years of Monken's coaching tenure, he was so thin on defensive backs that he would joke that if he had a player go down, he would have to just put a practice cone out there to take the place of the player, you know, and then he started to get, you know, some of his young talent in there that was being aggressively recruited that helped turn the program around. And 2017 season, 2016 season, yeah, you had players that had been recruited. 2016 was a mix of Ellerson and Monken players. 2017 was the first season where you really saw about 100% of the players on the field were players that had been recruited by Monken and his staff, and were now in the system and were coming up and learning their positions or being moved into positions where they were better suited to play. And they had been brought up in the Monken system, so they were well read and versed on the execution of the plays. The first disruption for the Monken era happened in 2019, and there were a couple of factors to do with that. It didn't have really much to do with the recruiting. It did have the fact to do with they lost their defensive coordinator, Jay Bateman, which was a big loss for the team. It was a huge loss. And during the course of 2019, there were a lot of injuries, and there were a lot of mistakes that were made by some of the player leaders in big games like Michigan that you know, cumulatively created the vibe in the locker room that, you know, you guys are preaching to us, and you're going out and doing things like jumping off sides on the goal line. and backing us up 5 yards, and then we don't even score what should have been an automatic touchdown. And so there was a little bit of discontent that existed, but never forget that in 2019, you had players like Cole Christensen, you had players like Elijah Riley, you had
NFL players,
right? And these, these players they're really good players. So it was just an unfortunate season, but, they were able to right the ship the following season and continue the course. And this season started off pretty rough, strangely enough, on the defensive side of the ball, but not so much given the uncertainty about the interior defensive line and the linebacking core. ULM was the first time I saw the defensive unit really play cohesively, especially in the second half. They still gave up a lot of yards rushing, but most of the yards rushing came in the first half. And then in the second half, for the last 2 quarters of the game, the Army defense played lights out. And that was more like what you would expect from a Nate Woody led defensive unit. And so we really do hope that that was a good harbinger of what we can expect to see from the defensive play against Air Force, because they're going to need to play lights out against Air Force.
We'll hear from Coach Nate Woody tomorrow night after practice. I plan to be up there, and we'll talk with the Army defensive coordinator. Let's put here one more interview that we did last week with an Army defensive player, and that being nose tackle Tyler Komorowskii.
Oh, Ken?
Yeah.
Excuse me. Just before you do that, they have the college football playoff rankings tonight. Tennessee, Ohio State, Georgia, Clemson are the first 2 out on Michigan and Alabama. Just to get that in.
Very good. Let's get our interview in. This is Kraetzer for CaMMVets Media. We're at West Point for Army football practice. Buck Knights getting set to play one of their 2 arch rivals, the Air Force Academy, next Saturday. We have a chance to talk to one of the seniors on the team, nose tackle number 93, Tyler Komorowskii. Tyler, how you doing? How's practice today?
Good. Great to get back out there and another day of work.
Very good. Now, tell us a little bit, how do you feel the season's been going on defense? Tell us a little bit about your role as a nose tackle.
I think throughout the course of the season, we just continue to get better each and every week. We haven't had the outcomes we wanted early on the season, but we just look to get better every week and learn from our mistakes in those games and just continue to grow, especially as a defensive line unit. That's something we preach on every single day. They just keep climbing the ladder and keep getting better every single day.
Absolutely, and 2 strong performances, Colgate and then Louisiana Monroe. How did those 2 games build the confidence of the defense?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think those 2 games really helped us get confident in our ability and what we do, and really just scheme of the defense, just be able to play fast and see things faster and give us the right momentum that's who we need going into this Air Force week.
Very good. Now you're familiar with Air Force. You played them here. You beat them the last 2 times. That epic game here in 2020 to close the season. Tell us, what was your memory of that game?
That game was just, it was already a tough year with COVID going on. Everyone knows the difficulties of that year, and just to see that team come together after beating Navy the week before and then coming back the next week to the Air Force and winning the CIC trophy and taking it away from Navy was just something special, and just something I always remember. Just the way that team came together that year is just something incredible. Absolutely.
And then last year you were down in Arlington, same place you're going to play next week. A game that went back and forth, a rock'em sock'em game. What was your memory of last year's game with Air Force?
Just a back and forth battle, just seeing how tough we are and really seeing what kind of culture we have. I think that was the biggest thing that stuck out in that game, was just our culture and our brotherhood and how we really banded together and just refused to lose that game.
And they got a couple of, really good offensive players. Brad Roberts, the fullback, and Daniel Hansing, their quarterback. They have a real strong rushing game, 336 yards a game. What's a challenge in facing this Air Force offense?
Yeah, so like you said, hats off. They do have a great offense. It's going to be a real challenge for us. But I think the biggest thing that we can focus on up front is just doing our job. You know, that's the biggest thing we harp on every single day, and we don't want to worry about them, and just want to worry about ourselves and play the way we know how to play.
Absolutely. And you got a big night coming up, probably just after the Air Force game, branch night. You'll get an envelope with a unit branch of the U.S. Army. Is there a particular branch you're hoping is going to be in your envelope?
Yes, sir. Hoping to go engineers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Tyler, good to see you, and best wishes. We'll see you down in Texas next Saturday.
Thank you.
Our pleasure. This is Ken Kraetzer for CaMMVets Media. Okay. Tyler Komorowskii, the nose tackle for the Army football team, has been splitting the job with a couple of players, Darius Richardson and a few others. And let me make sure I turn something off. Okay, we're still learning the technology here. Okay, Richard, we're all set back. Sorry for the delay, but interesting to hear Tyler, and he's a solid player. Do you see all the perspiration on his uniform from practice?
Oh.
Hard workout, and I think that's one of the challenges, Sam, is some have said the Army defensive line hasn't had enough size this year. Playing a couple of players that are more in the big linebacker category, like Austin Hill. What have you thought about how the defensive line has matured? I mean, it certainly was a big loss with Nolan Cockrell graduating last year.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a carousel for the players on the defensive line, trying to find the chemistry and teamwork that has been able to carry the defensive schemes and play calling the best. Most notably in the importance of the defensive line being able to tie up blockers and stop the run. And that's something that Army has been effective at the past few seasons, but this season they have not. And statistically speaking, they're in the bottom. They're towards the bottom of FBS football on stopping the run. And so it's really critical that whatever the dynamic is with the players that are being rotated in and out with the defensive line, that the right chemistry has got to be found. Someone with that Nolan Cockrell style motor that never stops, that says you can put 3 blockers on me, but I'm still going to stop you guys in your tracks and bottle up the runner to give my linebacker an opportunity to come blocker free and bottle the hole. So that kind of play making has been few and far between for the Army team this season. So, and I'm not being critical of individual players at all. So anyone who's watching this, all I'm saying is I'm certain that the players are, they know what needs to be done. They're familiar with Nate Woody's play calling and schemes, and they know what type of execution needs to happen and teamwork on the play in order to make the defensive line a cohesive unit that is not getting caught out of position, is not allowing blockers to go free onto the linebackers and getting runners 5 yards downfield before they make first contact. So Air Force is going to be a challenge. And but one thing about Air Force that, again, Steve Shalhoub's not here tonight, but he points out the fact that service academies typically play the other service academies pretty effectively against the run. And the reason is because you're most familiar with the type of offense another service academy is running. They run the triple option or a variation of the triple option that's very similar to what your own team runs. And so all through this season, during the spring practice, the summer camp and everything else, you're doing offense, first team O against first team D, second team O, second team D. and they're seeing this triple option. And then the scout team, it's not that hard for the scout team to simulate the same thing that Air Force is going to be running. So that means that the defensive schemes and understanding of where you are to be in position and what's out of position are, they're going to come a lot more natural against a team like Air Force. And I'm not saying that that automatically means that Army is going to bottle Air Force up. They're going to have to work for it, believe me. But they're going to be a lot more familiar with that type of offense than they were than, say, a Wake Forest style RPO, delay RPO, which cannot be properly simulated by the scout team leading up to the game. So it'll be interesting to see how well the interior line plays on the defense and the linebacking core, and how effective they are at stopping the B-back, Brad Roberts, and stopping Air Force's inside counterplay to the A-backs that they run a lot. The trap plays, the trap calls that they do to the A-back and the B-back. Are they prepared for that? Do they recognize the play and the blocking that's coming at them as soon as the ball is snapped? Do they see things about the way Air Force is lined up that teletypes what play they're about to run? And do they hold their assignments and not get caught out of position? Because triple option ball beats you by catching you out of position. And so it's going to take a very disciplined team effort by the Army defense. But again, take comfort in knowing that the Army defense is lining up against an offense they're very familiar with.
One game I wanted to mention that stands out in the Independence last week was UConn defeating Boston College 13-3. Which I think would be a surprise. UConn's going to be coming into Michie Stadium in 2 weeks, last home game of the year. And that game looks more challenging than some of us might have thought before seeing their effort against Boston College. Richard, before we wrap up, what are some of the games that you're going to be following this week?
Some of the games that I will be following this week on the college football schedule, as I get my iPad back up and working here. Sometimes when I have it, it goes out, but then I have to recharge it back up.
I'll give you a couple.
Okay. Some of the games I'll be watching this week. Number 2, Ohio State 8-0 taking on Northwestern. Northwestern is 1-7.
I don't think you're going to watch that game, Richard, unless you want to watch Ohio State. So go ahead.
Okay. Number 2, Ohio State taking on Northwestern. Northwestern's 1-7. Ohio State is 8-0. Texas Tech, 4-4 taking on the TCU Horned Frogs. The Horned Frogs are 8-0. TCU's at 500 at 4-4. Also, you've got number 8 Oregon 7-1 taking on Colorado. Number 1 Tennessee and number 3 Georgia. Sanford Stadium, 3:30 CBS.
That's going to be the big one.
Oh boy.
Absolutely. You got Alabama, LSU, and Notre Dame, Clemson.
7:30.
And also this game for Illinois playing Michigan State, who is 3-5, Illinois 7-1, 16th ranked, to see if they can stay with Michigan State and keep improving where they're at. Wake Forest, North Carolina State would be interesting. Both teams are 6-2. And anything else stand out to you, Sam?
Well, Army, Air Force.
And that we care about. You and I will be down there.
Right. And, but the Tennessee-Georgia game that's the big one on the marquee this weekend. And, nobody, including ourselves, nobody saw Tennessee having the year that they've been having so far. They're playing really well. They got an explosive offense. Georgia has, I believe, the best defense in the SEC. I think the X factor for the game is that it's being played between the hedges at Athens. And that's going to make the noise level a little difficult for the Tennessee offense to run that wide open style that they do, and the play calling at the line of scrimmage, and the checks and kills that they call. So, we'll see. We'll figure out pretty quick which team is truly the cream of the SEC right now. But it's going to be a good game, and I would imagine. I know the Army Air Force game will have concluded by then, so I'm sure that at the post game tailgate that my class will be at on Saturday, they'll probably have that Tennessee Georgia game on. We'll be watching it. So, and then I don't quite recall if Navy has a game this weekend. I think they do, but they may have a bye. I don't know. Navy. But Navy won in overtime against Temple. So there's good and the bad about that. I just wanted to.
They don't want to buy. They play Notre Dame November 12th next.
Okay, so there was good and bad about Navy's win against Temple. The good was they won. They won in overtime. And the bad is that their starting quarterback, Ty Levitai, went down with looks like a knee injury. I don't know what his status is. So Xavier Arline took over. Navy's offense was struggling to move the ball pretty much the whole game. And nothing really changed with Levitai going out and Arline coming in. They still struggled to move the ball. But you got to hand it to Navy, because Temple, before regulation expired, Temple got all the way down onto the Navy 4 with a 1st and goal with about a minute to go in the game, and were unable to punch it into the end zone, and instead had to kick a field goal to tie it up. So Temple could have won the game in the last minute, but the Navy's defense rose to the occasion. And then in overtime, Navy's defense rose to the occasion again and kept Temple out of the end zone. And so Navy scored a touchdown in overtime and won the game. So Navy's 2-0 in overtime this year. So that was their 3rd win of the season. 2 of them were overtime. So the moral of the story is the Army-Navy game, we don't want to go into overtime, right? So I don't know how many times Army-Navy's ever gone into overtime, but we don't want to do it this year because they seem to have a knack for winning in overtime.
Yeah, actually, Richard, Navy's going to be at Cincinnati this week.
Navy. Okay, Navy's going to be at Cincinnati.
Yeah, Cincinnati's going to be angry too, because Cincinnati dropped a heartbreaker to UCF, and Cincinnati was trying to put together another one of those dream seasons this year, and that was their 2nd loss of the season. So they're not going to be too keen on Navy rolling into town and pulling an upset on them. I'm predicting that Cincinnati probably put a pretty good drubbing on Navy this weekend.
ESPN's got a 91% prediction rate of Cincinnati winning that game. Okay, well, let's wrap up with our lightning round, go through our predictions for the Army Air Force game. And Richard, would you like to start?
Yes, I will. I would like to start. Army Air Force, a fantastic game. I think this is going to be a game. It's going to go into overtime. I know, Sam, you don't like that word, but it's going to be Army's going to come out with a victory of a late field goal that at the end, 29-26.
Okay. 29-26 in overtime is Richard Miller's prediction. Sam, what are you thinking about this game as far as the score?
Right. Well, again, if it flies, it dies. And this is part 1 of the Commander-in-Chief Trophy. And on paper, you would expect to see both of these teams run up a god-awful amount of rushing yardage and score a lot of points against each other. Historically speaking, in the Monken era, that's just not been the case. And every game against Air Force, with the exception of the 21-0 drubbing that Army put on Air Force out in 2017, has been a one-score game. And it's been a low-scoring game, not just a one-score game, but a low-scoring game. And that's because these teams know each other very well. And their defensive schemes are better suited to battle the service academy that they're so familiar with. The intensity of the rivalry, we can't discount the emotions that fly and the higher level of execution that you expect from your teammates as you go onto the field and you line up again, next to each other and know that the player to your left and right and behind you is they've got you covered. They're going to do their job. And that being said, sorry about this. I've kind of had a bout of the flu this week, so got to get better before this weekend. But that being said, this game is going to be no different. It's going to be a battle in the trenches. It's going to be a rumble royale, and it's going to be a low scoring affair again. And it's going to come down to, a field goal or a late touchdown to win it. I don't think this year is going to go into overtime like it did last year. If Army goes up early, don't celebrate, because Army has gone up early in a lot of these games and Air Force manages to battle back. So there's never a moment to prematurely celebrate. The only time to celebrate the game is when the gun sounds and your team wins. And I believe that Army showed against ULM that they have righted the program, that they have kind of found their identity, especially on the defensive side of the ball. They're coming into the game with momentum. Air Force played very flat against Boise State. And I know they had a bye week. Both teams had a bye week to kind of get themselves healed up and ready. The emotions are always going to be there. But I think that Army is going to prevail in this. And just like last season, I think it's going to be a low-scoring affair. So my prediction that it's going to be Army 20 and Air Force 17.
2017, okay. And I'm going to agree that it's going to be a low-scoring game, but I think both teams have potent running attacks that'll score touchdowns. I think it could be a battle of the field goal kickers. When Komorowskii for Army has shown that he is a consistent, confident kicker. I think you got the two big fullbacks ready for Army, Tyson Riley and Jacoby Buchanan. I think you're going to see Jamel Jones in starting and getting Army off to a fast start. I'm not sure if they're going to stick or they might put Cade Ballard in for a bit or Tyre Tyler and keep fresh legs in at the quarterback position. Defense, Andre Carter is a question mark. Whether he's going to be able to play, I'll be up at practice tomorrow. I'll get a chance to see whether he's in full practice gear or if he's in a sweatsuit as he was last week. That makes a big difference because he draws the attention of the blocking schemes and takes some of the pressure off of Leo Lowen to really make plays. Then it's going to be, Army's going to need a big game from Markel Broughton at safety. Probably making a lot of tackles rather than defensive coverage. So it's going to be a good one. I'm going to sign up for 27-24. The Army's going to win a battle of field goals, getting 2 field goals versus 1 for Air Force, and come out and hold on to the Commander-in-Chief trophy. If they win, they cannot lose the trophy. They can win it outright if they then would beat Navy. But if they lose, the trophy goes back in the truck to Colorado Springs. Sam, as you said, for the first time since when, 2016? Yeah, 2016.
Right.
When Army, year before Army took the Commander-in-Chief trophy. Okay, gentlemen, thank you for your participation tonight. And Sam, you and I will be in Arlington, Texas on Friday and Saturday. You will be celebrating your class of '87 reunion, and I will be there on Friday night for the pep rally and also the boxing competition that'll be held. We're going to see if we can get that streamed here on our page on Facebook. So I'm going to run, but again, thank you to Richard Miller in Florida and Colonel Sam Houston from the class of '87 in Huntsville, Alabama. I'm Ken Kraetzer in White Plains, New York, and this is CaMMVets Media. We proudly cover cadets, midshipmen, the military, and veterans. We've been doing it since 2008. Have a good evening, and we'll look forward to Saturday's game. Early start down in Arlington, Texas. Have a good evening.